Ron DeSantis is a tiny, angry, little racist shell of a man. And one of the ways that he proved that was a law that he passed, I guess, to try to earn some points on the right during his ill-fated attempt to become the president. So he argued that the AP African American Studies courses available in Florida lacked educational value, and so he banned them. That's a thing that he did. Seems crazy, but it's a thing that he did. And so we have good news on this front. He hasn't reversed that. Not that good news. And he hasn't been overruled or anything. That would be great news too. No, it's that some students at least are still gonna be learning that material. They're just gonna have to work extra hard for it. But some students are now giving up their Saturdays to learn the Black history lessons that their schools will no longer be allowed to teach. So some are learning at the Spady Cultural Heritage Museum in Delray Beach, and there's also similar programs at community centers across the state. Many of them are being supported by Black churches, which for generations have helped forge the cultural and political identity of their parishioners. So they have put together some resources and organized this so that some kids can still learn this stuff. Now I wanna get to the thoughts of Tamika Bradley Hobbs, manager of Broward County's African American Research Library and Cultural Center, about why this is important. Said people who are interested in advancing African diaspora history can't rely on schools to do that. I think it's even more clear now that there needs to be a level of self-reliance and self-determination when it comes to passing on the history and heritage of our ancestors. And so last year, less than half of traditional school districts actually had any courses on African American history or humanities anyway. It seems like there wasn't much for the right to fight against, but they're trying to stamp out any more accurate history as they can. But I guess this is something, Garrison. I was very curious what you think about this. Is this good news? Is this sad news? What do you make of this?
No, I mean, I think one, the project of the right is to make whiteness invisible again. I think the idea is that ever since, George Floyd, and even before that with Mike Brown and the Black Lives Matter movement, I think there has been a general kind of frustration with how much we've been talking about whiteness as a concept, as an identity. And I think that that's the thing that's animating a lot of this. White supremacy does not care about Black history. It simply cares about advancing its notion and its narrative about the supremacy of whiteness. And if Black history gets in the way of that, then it's against Black history. But it's really subsidiary. And so I think that's one thing that we have to really say and kind of hold on to and embrace. The other side of this, though, is that I kind of agree with Tamika Bradley Hobbs, who I think is very smart to say that there is a level of self-reliance and self-determination that actually gained us so many of our freedoms. It's the fact that the Black community came together to advocate for itself collectively in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s that got us here. And that ethic has to maintain. I mean, of course, there's so many people, Martin Luther King Jr. being one of them, who talks about how he feared that he may have integrated his people into a burning house. And I think some of this is kind of at play that, like, do I even really want the person who teaches history in the ways that uplift these kind of white supremacist characters in Florida? Do I want them to teach my history? Like, do I actually want them to be in charge of the way in which I learn, or my child learns, the history of liberation that Black people have lived through? And so in some ways I agree. Now, at the same time, I think it's important to say that Black people pay taxes as well. Black tax dollars actually go to support these educational systems as well. And it's not just about Black people. It's just the fact that we are all paying into these tax systems. And so they actually do owe us representative education. And I think that's a part of it. So I think the fight should continue to go on, but it should not be limited to whether or not a public school teaches your history. You and your children should be learning your history as well. And I think this is a positive step.
Yeah, it's look, and obviously, it's not like, these community centers are only gonna be for Black students to learn this stuff. It's obviously very important for Black students in Florida to learn this, but it's also it's important for everyone to learn this. Like, it's because it's true, because it is actually our history.
Exactly.
And we are not terrified of our kids understanding what is real and what is true. The right typically has been very, very scared of kids learning what is true because they know what is true and they want it to die. And so it's frustrating. I'm glad that this exists. And look, on a certain level, as the right kills more and more of education, Really fast. I know we don't have much time. I'm not going to say who, but I know a teacher in Texas in the Rio Grande Valley, a good school. And she told me that the library has been closed all year. And the reason that was given for why the library didn't need to be opened up is because the kids do enough reading in their other classes that
Wow.
they didn't need access to a library. And I just thought that feels very symbolic.
Wow.
Those books are accessible online. History books are accessible online. All of this is available, but how available? How much extra work should you have to do to get what should just be presented to you? And how many people will do that extra work? Obviously fewer than you would have otherwise. And like you can see dramatizations of these historic things, but like, like when a particularly dark, the destruction of Black Wall Street or whatever is in like a TV show, and then it's boycotted because of that. Or like Disney has like a gay kiss, and so they try to destroy Disney. And so then the companies decide, well, this isn't really worth it. Like you could still theoretically watch those, I guess, but now it's harder. Should it be harder? Should all of these things be so much harder? It's hard enough to get kids to want to do any of this anyway. Now we're expecting that they have to spend all of their weekends trying to catch up for the intentionally piss poor education that they're provided by the government because the government doesn't care. That is better than nothing, but it should be a stopgap measure. And we should get back to sanity in our education as fast as we can.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I'll say this. I think that, if I were to give anybody any advice, who am I to give advice, especially to parents? But I think that the future of this country is going to be in the hands of those who have reading comprehension skills. If I could tell you to focus on anything, it is to focus on that. Get books to your kids, get your kids reading. And I think that probably goes without saying, but I think it's worth saying as many times as possible that the anti-intellectualism that is fueling the fascist movement that we're kind of living through right now is built on top of people not reading. Right? I mean, that's much of it. That's so much of it. And so get your kids to read, and reading comprehension is kind of a superpower in this environment. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and we were talking about like the right-wing pipeline of like financial literacy and all that. Advice for men in particular: read a goddamn book. Yeah. There is an absolute crisis of male reading. They don't do it anymore. That's not good, okay? That's a disaster. You wanna make men stronger, you wanna make men great again, men need to start reading again, okay? Worship a media figure that's cracked a book in the past decade, okay? Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.